Okay, from the UFC Apex this Saturday night, UFC Fight Night, Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill in the main event. Let's just be honest with ourselves, it is one of the weaker main events the UFC can produce. There's a reason this card is in the Apex, and it's just not very good. Let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. It's not very good. It's not a very good card. There will be 12 fights on this one, and yeah, this Saturday night from the UFC Apex again, Dern and Hill in the main event, originally scheduled for UFC Charlotte last week. They have been rebooked for the main event spot this Saturday night, so that's what's coming up here with the UFC this weekend. And folks, if you haven't yet though, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. Okay, so our first fight is between Takashi Sato and Themba Gorimbo here. Both men at -110 for this fight, so we've got even odds in this one. It's an interesting fight considering Takashi Sato has lost his last 3 fights to the likes of Miguel Baeza, Gunnar Nelson, and Brian Battle. The Baeza lost an arm triangle choke in a co-main event spot, dropping one to Gunnar Nelson by decision, and then getting head kicked in the first round by Brian Battle. For Sato, his last one comes back in the summer of 2020 where he finished Jason Witt in the first round, but before that, dropping one to Bilal Muhammad, and then his last one before the Witt fight would have to be Ben Saunders back in 2019. He's going to be taking on Themba Gorimbo in this fight. For Gorimbo, 0-1 in the UFC, coming in taking on AJ Fletcher. Originally, the fight was supposed to be him and Billy Goff. Goff withdraws from the fight, so he ends up taking on AJ Fletcher instead. Fletcher ends up submitting him in the second round. This is on the Andrade Blanchfield Fight Night card. In that fight, Gorimbo didn't do much. I mean, in that first round, AJ Fletcher takes him down, or actually Gorimbo takes him down. Fletcher ends up getting on top. Fletcher wins that first round. In the second round, Gorimbo, another takedown, but again, ends up getting submitted. Fletcher off his back, ends up getting a guillotine choke in, and ends up submitting Gorimbo that way. So now you get Gorimbo and Takashi Sato here, two guys who, I mean, definitely for Sato, struggling as of late. I think Gorimbo's a guy, again, who in this fight, he's probably going to want to try to take down Sato. For Sato, he's probably going to want to try to keep it on the feet and outstrike Gorimbo. I mean, it's just dependent on how you see this one. Again, even odds in this fight. Probably don't lay anything on this one considering the results of these last two guys in their previous fights. Ever so slightly, I'm going to take Themba Gorimbo to win this fight. I got him to win this fight by decision. I think he's able to take this fight down. I think he's able to have some success down there. Even on the feet, I think he's able to be, he's going to be successful against Sato as well. I just don't think Sato at this point of his career is all that great. Again, coming off 3 straight losses, that's tough. He's 2-4 in the UFC. Again, we just mapped out his only 2 wins so far in the promotion. I think Gorimbo's able to go out there. I think Gorimbo is able to mix it up with the wrestling and then maybe with the striking as well. I think all around Themba Gorimbo is able to come in here and pick up his first win in the UFC. I think he's going by decision. Again, I could definitely see a finish, but give me Themba Gorimbo to beat Takashi Sato. I've got him to win this fight by unanimous decision. So Natalia Silva is one of the biggest favorites on the card. She is the biggest favorite on this card. -550 against +400 Victoria Leonardo for good reason. I mean, look at Silva's second fight in the UFC. The win over Teresa Bleda. I mean, the spinning back kick knockout in the third round is crazy. And it's a fight where Natalia Silva is likely, it's a closer fight because Bleda's the one wrestling her and Bleda's taking her down. She's looking for submissions, but Silva's winning the exchanges on the feet. That third round, my goodness, spinning back head kick knocks out Bleda, wins the fight on that Nzejuku Kutalaba card. Yes, that is the main event because it was originally supposed to be Lewis and Spivak. For Silva's first fight in the UFC, beating Jasmine Jasvidius by unanimous decision on that card in San Antonio. Kater Emmett, she beats her by unanimous decision. For Natalia Silva, really good striking. I mean, this is a fighter, again, who we were kind of, we didn't know what we were going to get out of her because she was the Jungle Fight flyweight champion, but she won that championship back in, or she defended the championship last in December of 2019. She takes 2.5 years off from fighting, comes in, it gets that fight against Jasvidius in 2022, wins it, then beats Bleda as well in her next fight. And honestly, the Victoria Leonardo fight was originally scheduled for Natalia Silva's debut all the way back in January of 2021. That was on that Chiesa Magni card on Fight Island. It was supposed to be the card on the Wednesday. That originally was supposed to be Victoria Leonardo taking on Natalia Silva. Silva withdraws, and they give Victoria Leonardo Manon Fiorot instead. And now, given both those fights would have been incredibly tough for Leonardo, as of now, I think we know that Manon Fiorot was the tougher fight, but maybe someday down the line, Natalia Silva is going to show why she might have been a tougher fight than Manon Fiorot because Natalia Silva's striking is really good. And we haven't even seen her ground game much yet. Now, I do think her striking game is better than her grappling game, and considering, yeah, Bleda had a little bit of success on the ground with her, even though Bleda was not able to submit her. But again, with Silva, we have seen her before in Jungle Fight go in there. That's how she won most of her fights, and that's how she won the championship, of course, by armbar. Something to note, she fought Marina Rodriguez back in 2017 in Thunder Fight. She lost by unanimous decision on a post-lim to that card, actually. But we're going to be seeing, she's going to be taking on Victoria Leonardo in this fight. And for Leonardo, 1-2 in the UFC, picking up a win over Mandy Bowman in her last fight by unanimous decision. Now, I'm recording this early in the morning, right before UFC Charlotte. So I don't know whether or not Mandy Bowman won her fight against Jeon Kim, but Leonardo goes in there. She beats Bohm by unanimous decision. And I mean, I guess if I'm talking about Mandy Bowman right now, again, she's 0-2 in the UFC. I don't know what she's going to do against Jeon Kim. Kim's on a big losing streak as well. I don't know. As of now, I'm not sold on Mandy Bowman. I have Jeon Kim to win that fight. Hopefully, I look smart here. I don't know. Anyways, Leonardo beats Bohm, and then before that, she drops back-to-back fights to Manon Fido and to Melissa Gatto. Again, back-to-back L's. She's now getting Natalia Silva. Silva's going to go in there, and she should mop the floor with her. I think Silva's going to be able to go in there. I think she's really going to be able to impose her striking game. I rarely pick finishes for women's fights, but I am considering it here. I think Natalia Silva eventually will find that knockout, and I think she's going to get that TKO. So give me Natalia Silva to continue her hot streak in the UFC, improving to 3-0. Natalia Silva gets Victoria Leonardo. She'll beat her by second round TKO. Interesting fight now. We've got Chase Hooper taking on Nick Fiore. This is interesting considering Nick Fiore's first fight in the UFC. He was supposed to get completely dominated. He's a plus 550 underdog against Matthias Rumbecki. He loses the fight by unanimous decision. Now, I had a bet that Rumbecki was going to go in there and going to finish. He didn't, which was great. But Rumbecki goes in there. He just dominates Nick Fiore on the ground. But Fiore, again, stays in the fight. He goes all 15 with Rumbecki in a fight where he, again, is a huge underdog. And he'll be taking on the Dream in Chase Hooper. For Chase Hooper, picked up a win on Fury Pro grappling against Clay Guida in his last fight, or last MMA event. But his last fight was the loss to Steve Garcia, where Garcia went in there and knocked him out in the first round. Now, I wouldn't say, honestly, no shame in losing that, because honestly, you look at what Steve Garcia did to a very good fighter, Shaila Nordembeka, in his last fight. I think Garcia is good, and nothing wrong with that. Hooper before that beats Felipe Colares, who unfortunately just passed a couple weeks ago. He was on a bike, unfortunately, and I believe he got hit by a bus, which really sucks. So RIP to Felipe Colares. But anyways, Hooper wins the fight against Colares. He finishes him in the third round. It's probably his best performance to date. Drops one to Steven Peterson before that. Beats Peter Barrett. Loses to Caceres. Beats Daniel Tamer in the UFC debut. I mean, you know what Chase Hooper's going to try to do. He's going to try to wrestle you. He's going to try to get you to the ground. However, he was not able to do that against Steve Garcia, considering Garcia dropped him 3 times in that fight, which was crazy. But he's going to get Nick Fiore, a guy who I would say is still pretty unproven. Fiore's a guy who usually wants to get the fight on the ground, as what he's been able to do in the regional scene, on Combat Zone when he had that one fight in CES, even though that was against Jay Ellis. Yeah, that Jay Ellis. But Fiore is normally trying to get the fight on the ground. Fiore is usually trying to grapple with you. Is he going to want to grapple with Chase Hooper? That's the question, because I think no matter how good Fiore is on the ground, likely, if you can keep Chase Hooper on the feet, he is very one-dimensional. Now, he's not Kron Gracie level one-dimensional, but he's still very young in his striking game. Hooper still kind of blocks punches with his face, and that's why, again, I think Hooper would have benefited from a regional scene run, because the guy's only 23 years old. He can still leave the UFC, fight in a regional for 3 years, come back, and become, a better fighter in the UFC, because really, Hooper's striking game needs work. It does. That's the biggest thing out of him. It needs work right now. And again, I don't think Fiore's the greatest striker, but I still think it's better. His striking game is better than Chase Hooper's striking game. With all that being said, I think Hooper's going to find a way to get the fight to the ground. This feels like a fight that keeps Hooper in the UFC. It's a fight that he can win. He'll likely take down Nick Fiore, and he'll likely find a way to get a submission. So I'm going to take Chase Hooper. Yes, I know I just badmouthed him, but still, in a stylistic fight like this, I think there's still a very good opportunity for him to secure a takedown, considering, yes, Fiore was taken down at Wilden's last fight. I know Rumbecki's a really good wrestler, but I still think Hooper has a definite opportunity to get this fight to the ground. I think that's what he's going to capitalize on. So give me Chase Hooper to go in here, win this fight against Nick Fiore. I think the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu is going to be huge. So it's going to be Chase Hooper to win this fight. I like him by unanimous decision. Next up now in the heavyweight division, we have got Ilir Latifi taking on Rodrigo Nascimento. Interesting fight here, because you know what Latifi's going to try to do. I mean, I can play this. I mean, it's pretty simple what Ilir Latifi is going to try to do to Rodrigo Nascimento. He's going to try to take him down. He's going to try to hold him down. Latifi is, he weighs in at about like 230 for the weight class. He weighed in at 253 for the Olynyk fight. I forgot he weighed in that heavy for that one. He weighed at 253 for the Olynyk fight. He just feels a little bit small just because height-wise, he is 5'10". So that's the one concern I have with the Ilir Latifi. But when you look at the Alexei Olynyk fight, again, Olynyk, kind of just gets dominated wrestling in that fight. The second round is more of a stand-up round, but in the first and third round, it's all Ilir Latifi out-grappling and out-wrestling a pretty solid grappler in Alexei Olynyk. Given Olynyk's 45 years old, sure. But Latifi's 40, he's still doing his thing. He's getting a guy now in Rodrigo Nascimento who does have a lot of skills on the ground. I mean, for a heavyweight, and many heavyweights aren't that well-rounded, Ilir Latifi and Rodrigo Nascimento, I would say Rodrigo Nascimento has some skills on the ground that can beat Ilir Latifi and can catch him off guard on the ground. Nascimento's jiu-jitsu isn't horrible. His striking game, I think, is better than Latifi's as well. I think he's quicker on the feet. I think he's got more power on the feet. This is a guy, again, who is 2-1 in the UFC, should be 3-1, but couldn't pass a drug test against Alain Baudot. First fight, he goes in there, beats Dontel Mace, drops his next one to Chris Daukaus, gets the fight against Alain Baudot where he knocks him out, and then he's got the split decision win over Tanner Boser in his last fight. What did Nascimento do to win that fight? He controlled Boser on the ground, and he wrestled Boser. So it's just a matter of, again, who the better wrestler is in this fight. Is it Ilir Latifi? Is it Rodrigo Nascimento? And usually I'm a pretty big Ilir Latifi guy, not because I'm a huge fan of the guy, it's just because the way he wins fights is pretty easy to predict, and he kind of catches a lot of guys off guard with his wrestling style. Now, I think Nascimento's the type of guy who can combat that, though. Nascimento never been taken down so far in the UFC, given not many guys have tried. I mean, the fight that has concerned me, he wasn't able to take down Alain Baudot. He went 0-for-3 in that fight. In terms of wrestling, I think the only guy to try to take him down was in the Contender, right? Because I don't really think, Nascimento has not been shot on yet, which, again, we will see. I think striking-wise, Nascimento has got more power. I think he's quicker. So if the fight stays in the feet and is contested on the feet, Rodrigo Nascimento, I think, is going to win. It's just a matter of if Ilir Latifi can find that wrestling base and Ilir Latifi can out-wrestle and out-strength and out-power Rodrigo Nascimento. Because there's a chance. There's a definite chance he's able to do that. I'm really split on the pick here. Ever so slightly, give me Rodrigo Nascimento to win the fight by decision. I did not think I was going to be coming into this video saying that. I kind of, I think I've convinced myself to take Nascimento. I think his skills on the ground will be able to keep him competitive down there, and then on the feet, I think he's the way better striker between him and Latifi. I'm not going to pick a finish. I'll say Nascimento wins by decision, considering Latifi is a tough guy to put away. So I'm going to say Rodrigo Nascimento will pick up the win. He'll get his third official win in the UFC. Give me Nascimento to win by unanimous decision. Next up, we have got Orion Cosce taking on Gilbert Urbina. For Orion Cosce in his last fight, he took on Blood Diamond. And Blood Diamond is a guy, again, who, not in the UFC anymore, primary kickboxer. It was a fight that Orion Cosce was supposed to win. I mean, he's taking a Blood Diamond again, a guy who's just primarily a kickboxer who does not know how to wrestle. Again, it is rare in MMA, and especially at the UFC level, where you can have a guy, and it's not possible anymore considering the level of these fighters in the UFC at this point. But where you have a guy like, Chrome Gracie, who's a jiu-jitsu guy, or Blood Diamond, who's a kickboxing guy. You have to have all bases for MMA at this point in time. You can't just be a primary striker, except if you're Alex Pereira and you have the strength that guy's got to defend some takedowns. But it's really rare you can just come in here and just kickbox or just grapple or just wrestle at this point. I think the only style that you would be able to do that in at this point is wrestling. I think you could still be able to be kind of successful wrestling, but you have to have some sort of knowledge on top control, and you got to know some jiu-jitsu if you're a wrestler. But anyways, going back to this fight, Orion Cosce, by the way, beats Blood Diamond in his last fight, and that's a good win for him. And it was a fight that we thought Orion Cosce was going to win, considering, again, Blood Diamond's guy can't wrestle, well, Orion Cosce can wrestle, and Orion Cosce has done that before. You look at his fight against Phil Rowe, the momentary spots in that fight where Orion Cosce's got success, especially in the first round, it's wrestling. He takes down Phil Rowe at ease in the first round, and he holds him down. However, in that second round, Phil Rowe comes back and he knocks him out. The Blood Diamond fight, again, Orion Cosce is able to get takedowns in the first and third rounds. Second round's a little bit shaky. He still wins the fight. He's still able to get through Diamond. Now, he's going to get Gilbert Urbina, who I'm surprised is getting another fight in the UFC, considering Urbina has not found the promotion in 2 years. He's coming off The Ultimate Fighter, where, okay, You look at Urbina's win on The Ultimate Fighter. It's Michael Gilmore. I'm surprised they even put Michael Gilmore in the UFC, but this is a guy, again, who was older. He was 35. He was a replacement fighter on The Ultimate Fighter. This is a guy, again, who has 0 wins by submission. He's been submitted 4 times. He went in the UFC. He lost to Urbina on The Ultimate Fighter. He got a shot against Andre Petroski. He loses. And then he got Ramiz Brahimaj. He loses by rear naked choke in the first round. It was an easy pick. Michael Gilmore was a guy who was not ready for the UFC level, who likely was never ready for the UFC level. And that was Urbina's only win on The Ultimate Fighter. How did he beat Gilmore? Oh, he submitted him. Well, Gilmore gets submitted by everybody. And then you ran into Tresean Gore. He loses, all right? But Gore could not make it. He got injured. He could not get to the final, so they had to book Urbina versus Battle, and Battle went in there and he submitted him. I actually picked Gilbert Urbina to win that fight. I thought Urbina's wrestling was going to be enough. I thought his jiu-jitsu was going to be enough. It was not. So I'm not confident about Urbina anymore. He had a fight against, Sean Brady in an LFA main event back in 2018 in Atlantic City, Jersey. He loses to Sean Brady by unanimous decision, as you expect, of course, as Brady was undefeated until Bilal remember the name Muhammad. But you get Urbina and you get Orion Cosce here. I just don't think Urbina is able to threaten much off his back, and I think Cosce's going to be able to be dominant with top control. I think Cosce's going to be able to wrestle Urbina. I don't think Urbina is going to have too many answers, honestly, because I think, again, Cosce's just going to be coming in this fight. He's going to put an aggressive wrestling pace on Gilbert Urbina, and he's going to make it tough for Urbina to fight him off. So give me Orion Cosce to win this fight at -160. I think Cosce comes in here, and I think, again, he out-wrestles Gilbert Urbina to victory. Orion Cosce picks up the win in his second one in the UFC. Okay, so in the women's strawweight division, we have got Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. Good for Karolina. She's won back-to-back fights. I thought she was going to retire after the Jessica Penne loss, but she has remained in the sport, and she's still fighting. And now I think we have to look back at Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and now we got to really examine the losing streak, because now that she is winning fights against fighters who, okay, are outside the top 15, that is fine, because Karolina Kowalkiewicz does not need to be a top 15 fighter anymore. All she needs to be is a fighter who can go in there, be on maybe, a prelim undercard, or, a prelims for a fight night, or maybe sneak on in the main card of a fight night, and just be a name on the card. Because that's what Karolina's kind of here for right now. And honestly, she's probably still fighting for money, which is fair. But if she can keep beating these type of fighters like Felice Herrig, like Silvana Gomez Juarez, like Vanessa Demopoulos, okay, but let's be fair to Vanessa Demopoulos here. Demopoulos is a fight or two away from the top 15. That's just the way she's been fighting. She's 3-1 in the UFC. So this is a huge fight, because if Karolina can win, again, we were talking about her not being a contender anymore, but the UFC might look to push Karolina back to the top 15 if she can beat a fighter like Demopoulos, who, again, is 3-1, and her only loss is a short notice fight up a weight class at 125 against JJ Aldridge, right? So for Karolina, okay, the losing streak, when you look at it really, they're not bad losses. Jessica Andrade, she gets knocked out in the first round. Okay, former world champion. Michelle Waterson, okay, still, Waterson's been a fight or two away from the championship before. Alexa Grasso, world champion. She loses by decision. Yan Xiaonan is going to be fighting, Zhang Wei Li, likely for the championship in China, I would think in the fall. She loses to her by decision. Jessica Penne is the one where you're like, okay, well, because Jessica Penne is a fighter who was coming back off a long layoff. Penne submits her by armbar. She beat Lupita Godinez, but after those two fights that she won against Godinez and Kowalkiewicz, she's dropped to Emily Ducote, who we're going to talk about in a few moments, and Tabitha Ricci. She gets submitted in the second round by Ricci. Anyways, for Karolina, though, she's bounced back. She's won back-to-back fights. She beats Silvana Gomez Juarez. She stays in the pocket with her. She swings with her. She out-wrestles her in the first round. It is a good win for Karolina in that fight. And now she's going to be taking on Vanessa Demopoulos, a fighter who has won 3 straight fights at strawweight. I don't really want to talk about the Aldridge fight, because that's a flyweight. She's a strawweight fighter. She's a fighter who is very small for the weight class. She's 5'2", and you look at the Silvana Gomez Juarez fight. It is a common opponent between Kowalkiewicz and Demopoulos. Well, in the Demopoulos fight with Gomez Juarez drops her right away. Goes straight into Demopoulos' guard. Demopoulos throws up an armbar, submits her. Okay, then she gets Jinh Yu Frey in her next fight. It's a very close fight. She beats Jinh Yu Frey by split decision. It's really close. Because, definitely the third round was Demopoulos. She runs away with it in the third. The deciding round's the second, because you give the first Jinh Yu Frey. The second round's a close one, right? They gave it to Demopoulos. I'm not upset with the scorecard at all. And then her last fight, she beats Maria Oliveira, the fighter who is nicknamed Spider Girl because somehow she reminded her camp of Anderson Silva. What? Anyways, female Anderson Silva gets dropped by Vanessa Demopoulos in the second round. Demopoulos scores her first UFC knockdown. She wins the first 2 rounds because she wrestles Maria Oliveira in the first round. The third round, though, she gets beat bad. Maria Oliveira should have won that third round, I think, but I don't know, because that was a bad English statement out of me right there. But Demopoulos wrestles Oliveira, doesn't really do much with it. Oliveira gets the fight back to the feet. She outstrikes Demopoulos. That's fine. Demopoulos wins the fight. Now, I think Carolina is the better striker. I think Carolina, if the fight has to hit the mat, is better down there. All around, I think Carolina Kowalkiewicz is the better fighter. I would concern about her chin because she does seem a little bit washed up with that, or just, again, it seems a little bit cracked. But, again, we just have that from one fight in 2018. I think she was real hesitant after that. She's been losing fights by getting taken down. Well, I don't really think Demopoulos is going to be that fighter. I would get concerned about Demopoulos' jiu-jitsu in this fight, but I don't feel great about her wrestling style, so I think Carolina is able to keep it standing in that realm of things. And again, if she was able to stand and bang with Silvana Gomez-Juarez, a fighter who hits really hard, and she didn't get knocked down once, I think Carolina's chin is fine. So give me Carolina Kowalkiewicz to beat Vanessa Demopoulos. I think she's going to outstrike her, and I think if she has to, she can get her to the ground. Give me Carolina to win this fight. I got Kowalkiewicz by unanimous decision. Okay, so in our featured prelim, we get two guys in Vyacheslav the Slava Claus Borshchev taking on Maheshate. Two guys who at one point had a lot of hype behind them, and two guys who have a style of fight they want to fight, but haven't been able to fight that style of fight in the last couple of fights. And especially for Borshchev, Slava Claus losing his last two because he just got out-wrestled and he got grounded in his last two fights. Mike Davis went in there and grounded him. You get 30-26s on that scorecard because, again, Davis was that good at getting Vyacheslav Borshchev down. And then for Slava Claus before that, he drops one to Mark Ducote. Ducote wrestles him for 13 minutes. He gets 11 takedowns. Ducote beats him. So we have figured out how you beat the Slava Claus. You wrestle him, and you hold him down, and you continuously, again, aggression with wrestling, you take him down, and if you don't get the first time, you keep shooting, you keep shooting, you keep shooting. Now, the fight that Borshchev had against Dakota Bush, he gets back up, he reverses it, he gets back to the feet, big, liver shot to Dakota Bush, folds him. Vyacheslav Borshchev wins the fight for Dakota Bush, no longer in the UFC. He has won back-to-back fights in FAC, most recently after the Borshchev loss. And also for Borshchev, win over Chris Duncan on the Contender Series still looks good because Duncan's a guy who did beat Omar Morales at UFC 286. That's not a bad win for Borshchev as well. He finishes Chris Duncan with a left hook in the second round. In that fight against Duncan, again, Duncan takes him down 2 times, but Borshchev gets back up. It's just a matter of how good Borshchev's wrestling opponent is, or how good his opponent's wrestling is, and how good is his top control. Because that's going to be dependent on how Borshchev wins this fight. Because Borshchev, again, needs help on the ground. But for Maheshate, this is a guy whose last fight, he loses to Rafa Garcia. Garcia wrestles him, but not as much and not to the certain extent that Borshchev has been wrestled in. And Maheshate, before that, knocks out Steve Garcia, and he's got a win on the Contender Series as well by unanimous decision. We can talk at will about how much Borshchev sucks with his wrestling and how much he has been taken down and controlled down. But really, is Maheshate going to be the guy to hold down Borshchev? No, he's not going to. Because Maheshate has not landed a takedown yet in the UFC. I don't believe he has not attempted a takedown yet in the UFC. That's not what he does. He's a striker. And yes, he knocked down Steve Garcia twice in their fight in Singapore back in 2022. And yeah, he finished him and he melted him in a minute 14. But the style of fight you want to fight against Borshchev, you want to wrestle him. Maheshate's not going to do that. And Borshchev gets a fight where he wants to, he's always wanting to remain standing. Well, he's going to get a fight where he is going to be given that opportunity, and that's going to be against Maheshate. So I think for Borshchev, and for both Borshchev and Maheshate, it's a fight that favors both of them a lot, but especially Borshchev, because Slava Claus, again, there is a blueprint out there to beat him. Right now, this is a fight where he will not get taken down, and even if he does get taken down, it's going to remind me of the Chris Duncan fight. It's going to remind me of the Dakota Bush fight. Borshchev should be able to get back up, and Borshchev should be able to get back to his striking base. So in a pure striking fight, honestly, give me Slava Claus. I think Slava Claus is able to go in there. I think he's able to get a finish. I think, he's a slight favorite with the odds. Tapology, a lot of people are taking Maheshate. I think Borshchev's able to keep it standing, and I think he's able to find a finish in the second round. Again, I think he's a better striker, and I think if he doesn't have to really worry much about the ground game, Borshchev's going to be solid here. He's going to get into a striking base, and he's going to beat Maheshate. So give me Slava Claus. Slava Claus, Vyacheslav Borshchev to beat Maheshate. He's going to get it done by second round TKO. Okay, so the career resurgence for Michael Johnson continues. He'll be taking on Carlos Diego Ferreira, and it's a fight that really, it's an opportunity that's really presented itself for Michael Johnson, because Michael Johnson, this guy is 13-14 in the UFC, professional record of 21 wins, 18 losses. He's only 36 years old. I doubt he's close to done. He's won 2 out of his last 3 fights. The big knockout against Alan Patrick, Loses the fight to Jamie Malarkey, where I don't think he lost. A lot of people thought Michael Johnson won. I thought Johnson won by split decision, or by decision. I don't, obviously you don't predict a split, but I thought he won the fight. And then most recently, he gets the fight over Mark DeCasey. He keeps the fight standing against DeCasey, and he beats Mark DeCasey. So now here we go. We get a very interesting fight between him and Diego Ferreira. And for Diego Ferreira, this is a fighter who has lost his last 3 fights. For Ferreira, he has struggled recently, especially because, again, he's been taking on really good fighters. And now Michael Johnson will be a slight step down. The start of the losing streak, or the start of the, his highest point was submitting Anthony Pettis on a Conor McGregor main card and getting him easy. He took Pettis' back and he submits him with a rear naked choke. You're thinking, okay, Carlos Diego Ferreira has finally arrived. He gets a big fight against Beneil Dariush. I remember people were talking about this fight on the Overeem Volkov card in the Apex. It was ridiculous. It was that low on the card. I believe they had to bump it up to the main card in the middle of the week. But it was the fight where everyone was talking about, okay, the dark horses in the weight class. 2 guys who, again, are on big winning streaks. Someone's got to win and someone's got to, go to the next level in the weight class. That man was Beneil Dariush. Dariush beats Diego Ferreira by split decision. I don't think it should have been a split. I thought it was a pretty obvious win. Dariush out-wrestles Diego Ferreira in the first 2 rounds. The third round, again, is more of a stand-up round, but I honestly thought Dariush won that round too, so I thought Dariush won all 3 rounds in that fight. Don't really like the split scorecards in that one. I'm looking at you, Jaron Villel taking Diego Ferreira to win that fight, which was ridiculous. And then after that, Diego Ferreira runs into Gregor Gillespie. Gillespie ends up finishing him in the second round. He finishes him by TKO, and Gillespie comes back after that long layoff, and we haven't seen him since. So I don't know where he is. It's been 2 years. Where is Gregor Gillespie? And then after that, for Ferreira, he loses to Mateus Gamrot. Gamrot beats him in the second round. It's a knee. It's a submission to strikes. I think it just something. It hit on the right spot. Ferreira couldn't continue. Okay, Gamrot wins the fight, but you know how good Gamrot is. Ferreira, though, was honestly holding his own until that point. Now, everyone has been wrestling Diego Ferreira recently. It's not going to happen in this one. Michael Johnson's not going to wrestle him. It's just a matter of now, will Diego Ferreira try to take advantage of the lack of, grappling skills of Michael Johnson, and will he try to take him down, will he try to wrestle him? There's a definite chance that happens, but there's also a definite chance Michael Johnson can keep this fight standing, and Michael Johnson can just work his strikes against Ferreira, and eventually maybe Johnson will find that power on the feet, and eventually he will finish him. I want to pick Michael Johnson so bad here because I do want to cheer for Michael Johnson in this fight, so I will, even though I'm not confident in the pick at all. I think this is a very close fight, considering, yes, Ferreira has lost a lot, and he may look washed, he may look, on the downslope of his career. He is 38 years old. But you can also say that, okay, he's just been taking on tough guys. He gets a fight like this against Michael Johnson, who's a name, but, Johnson's a primary striker who isn't the greatest at wrestling and defending takedowns and working his jiu-jitsu. So there's a definite possibility for Ferreira to win this fight. There's a pathway for Ferreira to win this fight. I'm going to take Michael Johnson, though. I think Michael Johnson's able to keep the fight on the feet, and I think in a pure striking fight, if Johnson's able to stuff takedowns and Johnson's able to avoid the grappling exchanges, he is going to beat Ferreira to a pulp on the feet. I think he's able to go in there. I think he's able to work his strikes, and I think he's able to find a second-round knockout here. I think Johnson, again, he will keep his range. I think he'll really land those big power shots. Michael Johnson at plus 115 and at plus money is able to win, giving Michael the Menace Johnson to win this fight, improving to now 14-14 in the UFC. Johnson wins. He gets it done by second-round knockout. So remember all the hype Andrea Fialho had at one point in time? Because this is a guy in Fialho who, I believe it was the beginning of last year, was it? Where he was middle last year, where he fought it. So, okay, this is how it goes. He comes in the UFC, he drops his first fight to Michel Pereira. Okay, it's short notice, pay-per-view main card, loses UFC 270 in Anaheim, he loses by decision. That's fine. Comes back in April, he knocks out Miguel Baeza, and then he quickly turns it around UFC 274. He gets Cameron Van Camp. Okay, Van Camp is a real entry-level guy in the UFC. Fialho did what he's supposed to do to Van Camp in that fight. He knocked him out in the first round. Van Camp's a guy who is no longer in the UFC after dropping 2 fights to Fialho and to Nicholas Moda. He's gone from the promotion. They originally brought him in as a late replacement for Moda or to fight Moda. Fight never happened, so he got a fight against Fialho, loses, and then he fought Moda against Moda. Eventually he loses. Now he's outside the UFC. But that's what Fialho was supposed to do to a guy in Van Camp. He's a minus 465 favorite. But then he says, okay, I want to fight again. I want to fight in the next pay-per-view. I want to fight on every single pay-per-view. Give me a fight, UFC 275. I want Jake Matthews. That fight did not end up well for him. Jake Matthews went in there. He won the first round. Jake Matthews eventually finishes him in the second round. Now, for Jake Matthews, he came back. He lost to Matthew Semmelsberger in his last fight in the Apex, which kind of sucked. He was booked against Gabe Green on this card, or on the card. That's going to be yesterday. I'm recording this again after UFC Charlotte. He's supposed to fight Gabe Green. Gabe Green now taking on Brian Battle. Don't know how that fight went. I don't know. But for Fialho, again, lose to Matthews. And then they book him against Muslim Salikov. And Salikov spinning back kicks him in the 3rd round. And Salikov wins the fight on the, again, in Zejiku Kutelaba card. It's a fight where Fialho was just getting beat. He really he didn't have much going. Maybe you could make the case the 1st round was for him, but the 2nd round, all Salikov just dominant. In the 3rd round, Salikov again taking over as well. So it's weird to see how Fialho has kind of fallen off since those back-to-back wins and the back-to-back knockouts. It's just because I think he was taking on guys that weren't very good. I don't think Baeza's at the best point of his career right now. I think Baeza has kind of just been figured out. His chin just isn't what it was, a while ago. I think, he kind of he got taken from that Santiago Ponzinibbio war in the Apex. And Cameron Van Camp just wasn't really a UFC caliber guy, at least it's just not yet. And now they want to give Andre Fialho Joaquin Buckley? You give him all these power guys, and you give him the power guy in the weight class in Buckley. This is not going to go well for Fialho. 1st round knockout for Joaquin Buckley's the pick, but my goodness. I mean, look at what Buckley's been able to do in the UFC. Comes in, drops first fight to Kevin Holland, beats Imbuka Sanganai with the jump spinning back kick, takes down Jordan Wright, or he just knocks out Jordan Wright in the 2nd round. Then gets a fight where he beats Antonio Arroyo, but he drops one to Alessio Jijidico in between that. Beats Abdulrazak Al-Hassan by split decision, where he had the Detroit Urban Survival training guy in his corner. He beats Albert Duraev by 2nd round stoppage. Now, Buckley's dropped back-to-back fights, but they are against top 15 guys, and also in 2 top 15 guys who will be fighting each other in Nasruddin Imavov and Chris Curtis. He drops the fight to Imavov by unanimous decision, and then Chris Curtis with a picture-perfect left cross in their fight at UFC 282. Uncle Live Blachowicz. Of course, Curtis goes in there and picks up the knockout. Now you get Buckley and Fialho. These 2 guys are going to swing, and both these guys can definitely knock each other out with the strikes that they throw. My thing is, again, I think Buckley's better. I think Buckley's got more power, and I think Buckley's just all around the better striker. I think more opportunities are going to present itself for Joaquin Buckley to knock out Andre Fialho than they are for Andre Fialho to knock out Joaquin Buckley. Buckley just got, again, Chris Curtis is the type of fighter who is he's a good fighter, but he takes pictures in there, and he really sets up his strikes, and he really finds that, that point where he can land that big shot to knock out his opponent. Buckley got set up in that fight, and that shows you how good Chris Curtis is. I don't think Andre Fialho is going to be able to set the traps that Chris Curtis was able to set up. And I think Buckley, again, is a fighter who's going to go in there. He's going to swing. Fialho is not going to be able to counter as well as Chris Curtis is able to do. Buckley's going to be able to go in there. He is going to, I think, push and corner Fialho back into the fence, and I think he's just going to swing big. And I think Buckley's going to be able to knock him out. I think you're going to see some wild exchanges in this fight, but in that 1st round, give me Joaquin Numansa Buckley to beat Andre Fialho. I like him to win. Give me Buckley by 1st round knockout. Okay, well, at short notice, yet again, Lupita Godinez steps in against Emily Ducote. Here we go. Big spot for both fighters for Lupi Godinez. The last fight, just winning in April against Cynthia Calvillo by split decision. Godinez is always active. She's always looking for a fight, and she gets another one, and she gets it against Emily Ducote. And this is a fight that can get Godinez in the top 15 because that's what Ducote is. Ducote's a top 15 fighter. Now, she's supposed to be booked against Polyana Viana, and she's booked against Polyana Viana twice. Fight never happens. Her last fight loses to Angela Hill, who is now in the main event of this card. She loses by unanimous decision. It's a fight where Angela Hill goes in there and just outstrikes Emily Ducote. Hill's volume is on point in that fight. She outstrikes her 182 to 71. Again, yes, a 111 strike differential in that fight in favor of Angela Overkill Hill. It was one of Hill's best performances to date, and it was huge over fighter in Ducote, who comes in the UFC her first fight, kicks the ever-living hell out of the legs out of Jessica Penne, makes it so Penne can barely walk at the end of the fight in their fight on Long Island in July of 2022. And again, this is a fighter who was coming in from Invicta. She was the Invicta champion. She was the Invicta strawweight champ. She beats Penne. She loses to Hill now, and now she gets Lupita Godinez. And we are going to see Godinez go in there and try to wrestle her, because that's what Godinez does. That's what she's going to try to go out there and do. She will mix it up with the striking, but she's primarily going to try to strike. She's going to try to wrestle with you. Now, she was not able to wrestle Cynthia Calvillo because, again, Calvillo, a really good wrestler, and Godinez is another fighter who's lost to Angela Hill. Her last loss before the Calvillo fight was a fight in San Diego against Angela Hill. And also, isn't it funny that we talk about all of these fighters who Ducote fought on Long Island, Ducote fought Angela Hill in Orlando, Godinez fought Angela Hill in San Diego, Calvillo and Godinez fought in Miami. Where is this fight? In the UFC Apex. And my goodness, quick Apex rant. Why are they still in the Apex? And why are they still scheduling more in the Apex? All the fight nights, except for one or two now, because of London, are in the Apex. So you have like 9 of the 11 fight cards in the summer are in the UFC Apex. It is the summer of 2023. It's not about COVID anymore. It's just about, oh, the UFC's lazy. They don't want to get out and they don't want to promote the sport in other places because, oh, the PFL's doing it. The Bellator's doing it. One Championship's doing it. Everyone else is fighting with crowds every single week. The UFC Apex. It is ridiculous. It is horrible. It makes the fights not as fun to watch. I hate it. Anyways, Ducote and Godinez here. For Godinez, again, she's going to try to mix it up with the wrestling. That's what she's done most for fights. She's been that aggressive wrestler who's been able to take her opponents down. Most recently, though, Godinez has been forced to strike with their opponents because their opponents have been able to stuff the takedowns and her opponents have been able to keep the fight on the feet. We will see if Ducote is able to keep the fight standing against Lupita because, you know, that's where she wants it. Ducote's going to want to strike with Lupi Godinez because I think Ducote, again, I think she's a better striker than Godinez, but when you mix everything up and you take into account the wrestling game and the style that Godinez is going to be able to go out there and bring, then I think it makes it tough because, again, then the styles get clashed, then Ducote's not always worrying about the striking, she's worrying about the wrestling some, then that's where I think it does get interesting. So that's why ever so slightly I'm going to take Lupi Godinez to win by decision. I think she's able to mix it up just enough. I think she's able to give Ducote just enough problems everywhere, and I think Lupi Godinez is able to win by unanimous decision. I think, again, it is a close fight for me because I think Ducote's able to, it might be able to go in there and outstrike her, but I think Godinez is able to do enough. So give me Lupi Godinez to win this fight. I think on short notice, she does it again. Lupi Godinez will beat Emily Ducote, working her way in the top 15. Give me Godinez to win by unanimous decision. I'm just going to save myself the embarrassment. I messed up big time on this one. I'll be talking for a while about how, why is Anthony Hernandez a huge underdog in this fight? Why is he plus 300? Why is Shahbazyan minus 240? I mixed it up. Okay, it's the other way around. Shahbazyan's the big underdog. Hernandez is the big favorite. Whoops, that's on me. So take everything I say until probably my realization. Everything I say about the fight is true. Like, I don't change my pick because of the underdog pick. Everything I say about the fight remains constant. It's just, okay, me talking about the odds is messed up because I totally misread the odds. Anyways, everything about the fight stays the same. The prediction stays the same. I'll realize it as you go with this prediction here, but yeah, just roll it, you'll see. Okay, co-main event time between Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and Edmund Shahbazyan. It will be the final fight I'm going to be talking about here because last week, again, I'm not going to redo the pick between Mackenzie, Dern, and Angela Hill. That fight was just scheduled for the Charlotte card last week. The prediction remains exactly the same, but we get Anthony Fluffy Hernandez here in the co-main event taking on Edmund Shahbazyan. Now, the odds are interesting. I think they're a little bit swelled too much. I think you can get really good value right now, plus 240 for Anthony Hernandez. Shahbazyan coming in at minus 300. It's interesting because this fight, again, the odds are like this for Vegas, but then when you look at the picks on Tapology and look at what people are picking for this fight, 67% Anthony Hernandez, 33% Edmund Shahbazyan, which is really interesting because Shahbazyan is coming off his first win in a while. He gets the win over Adalcha Lujanbula. It was a fight that they basically gifted him to win. He needed to win a fight, and he did it. He beats Lujanbula. He finishes him in the second round. That was before 3 straight losses, though, against 3 really good guys. Derek Brunson, okay. Jack Hermanson, sure. Nascimento Mavov, all right. I mean, those are good fighters, and there's no shame in losing to those guys. All those guys really beat him on the ground, and Shahbazyan wasn't ready for that. And that's why I think people are taking Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, is because Fluffy Hernandez can be able to take Shahbazyan down and will be able to take Shahbazyan down. That's where Hernandez goes out there, and he does. This fight's completely, it's dependent on if Alexander Hernandez can get a takedown, because if he's able to get a takedown, plus 240 is looking tremendous right now for him. I'm just concerned, what is up with this line? Like, is there something we don't know about with Anthony Hernandez? Because on paper, it feels like this fight should be pretty even. I think it should be. Hernandez is a guy who's won his last 3 fights. He's got a win over Mackenzie by submission in the 3rd round. He beats Josh Fremen by decision. He submits Adolfo Vieira before that. He's good. It's just a matter of, is Shahbazyan truly back, and can Shahbazyan stuff a takedown at this point? Because that's what it is. And that's, again, what has halted all of Shahbazyan's momentum as of late. That's what had him lose a bunch of fights, is that he was not able to stuff takedowns. If he's able to stuff takedowns from Alexander Hernandez, and if he's able to keep the fight on the feet against Alexander Hernandez, Shahbazyan will win. Edmund Shahbazyan will win this fight. He'll probably knock out Alexander Hernandez. But that's a big if. That's a big ask. Because, again, Hernandez is good. And I don't want people, giving up on Shahbazyan already. The guy's only 25 years old. He's still very young. They pushed him right away because he's from that Ronda Rousey camp. They pushed him young. They pushed him early. They pushed him too soon. But now he gets a guy in Hernandez who is another guy who's just flying under the radar, but he's a really good grappler and he's a really good jiu-jitsu player. There were so many other guys. If the UFC was trying to build up Shahbazyan slowly, which they should be trying to do, but they're not, there are so many better guys they could have given Hernandez who are around his level that he could have beat, who are strikers. They could have given him a guy like, I'm just trying to think. They could have given him a Chidi Njokuani. They could have given him Andre Petroski would have been tough, but they could have given him a guy like Njokuani. They could have given him a guy like, hell, even they could have given him Makrad Muradov, honestly. They could have given him, Phil Hawes just fought. Joe Pyfer would have been really tough for him, but they could have given him a guy like that. Hell, they could have given him a Tavares rematch. They could have given him RoboCop. That would have been a good fight. They should have given Gregory Rodriguez, honestly. But they didn't. Rodriguez is going to be fighting Dennis Tulin. He's going to get that fight. He's going to finally win a fight, which I'm glad he's going to win that fight in Jacksonville. But I think this is just tough for Shahbazyan, and I rarely pick plus 240 underdogs. But yeah, I'm going to do it here. I think Hernandez is able to take him down. I think Hernandez is able to find a lot of success in the ground against Edmund Shahbazyan. I just think the way this fight is built, that's, I think that's what we, I think that's the smart pick here. Oh, and I'm absolutely tripping. I don't know why I mixed this up, so disregard the graphic on the screen. Okay, no, Hernandez is the favorite. Hernandez is at minus 300. That's still bad too, because I just don't think that Hernandez should be that big of a favorite. Now, I still, everything I said is true. I think Hernandez is still going to win the fight. Again, now the odds are a little bit concerning too, but now that makes more sense. That's the odds I would put on Hernandez. That's why I was confused. I just confused myself. That is on me. So please disregard what I said earlier. I know you might have commented already that I'm stupid. I get it. That was bad. And yes, I can read, okay? But, oh, okay. So it still makes, it's still interesting though, because I don't think Shahbazyan should be that big of an underdog, but it makes sense. It makes sense, because I think Hernandez should be able to take him down. I think he should be able to get the submission in the second round. Again, I would be concerned about Shahbazyan knockout early, but still, yes, Alexander Hernandez should be able to win. I think I like him by second round submission and win this fight. Again, if he can get out that first round, it should be all Hernandez to win this fight. So disregard what I said at the beginning of the video. I still like Hernandez to win. You're just not getting him at plus money. Whoops, my bad. So that'll do it here for the my part of this video. Of course, next up, we're going to have Mackenzie, Dern, and Angela Hill. Talked about the fight last week. It's going to be the same exact prediction, so just roll that. Focusing on for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more UFC here on the channel. Make sure to hit that like button if you did enjoy. We'll be back next week for that fight card in the Apex Kai Kara France main events against Amir Albazi. First flyweight main event since December of 2020, so make sure to come back next week for that. Thank y'all for watching, folks, and Mamba forever. Let's now roll Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill. Okay, Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill. This fight is again dependent on if Mackenzie Dern can get this fight to the ground. That's the simplest way I can break this fight down for you. We can, again, and some of these fights you can go back and look at the past fights with all these fighters, but really, that's how this fight's gonna end up. And you look at Mackenzie Dern's last fights, okay, the Yan Xiaonan fight, she wins the rounds where she's able to get Xiaonan down, but when she's not able to take Yan Xiaonan down, she loses. She ends up losing a majority decision to Yan Xiaonan, who is likely next for the title shot. She will likely fight Zhang Weili. That fight should be in China. We'll see when that fight takes place. Mackenzie Dern's fighting against Tecia Torres, a fight where that doesn't really happen much. Mackenzie does find a way to get Torres down to the ground. She barely wins a split decision. The Marina Rodriguez fight, not able to get Rodriguez down. She loses. But with Mackenzie Dern, and I remember that Marina Rodriguez fight vividly, that one round where Mackenzie Dern's able to take her down, it is the second round. She is always so dangerous on the ground. She can have you for a second. Even in that fourth round where Dern takes Rodriguez down, only has her down for like 40 seconds, she's always threatening with something. And that's how good of a jiu-jitsu game Mackenzie Dern has. She's always going to threaten with any little submission. And that's, again, that is how good she is in terms of grappling. Because she's just on a different level. And I know we just watched Kron Gracie fight Charles Jourdain on the main card of the pay-per-view last night. It was bad. Let's just be honest. It was a bad performance out of Kron Gracie. Gracie showed that he was very one-dimensional, and that's really all that he could do. Again, Dana White said it probably best. It looks like we went in a time capsule from 1995, and we're watching MMA from back then, because again, Kron Gracie was just all he wanted to do. You haven't seen scoots on the ground while kicking, again, probably since the early tournament days of the UFC. But at least with Mackenzie Dern, she is not like Kron Gracie, where that's all she has. Mackenzie Dern has one fight striking-wise. Look at the Vina Jandiroba fight. I know Jandiroba is primarily a grappler who just beat Marina Rodriguez last night as well. But for Dern, she goes in there and she outstrikes Vina Jandiroba at UFC 256. She is still capable of winning fights from the feet. But in a fight with Angela Hill, she is not going to outstrike Angela Hill. Hill's last fight, she She goes in there, she beats Emily Ducote, she beats Lupi Godinez before that. Back-to-back fights where Angela Hill is probably supposed to lose both those fights against up-and-coming fighters who the UFC thinks very highly of. Ducote and Godinez, two fighters that have barely cracked the top 15 in the UFC, who are both younger fighters who haven't fought that much in the UFC. Well, Hill has sent them back down the ladder because, again, of her veteran experience and because of her striking. She's going to have to outstrike Mackenzie Dern to win this fight, and she will do that, so she's going to have to be able to keep this fight standing against Dern, because if she's able to keep the fight standing, she should win. I don't know if she's able to do so, because Dern's takedowns aren't great, but all she really needs is one, and if she's able to get that one takedown, she's able to win. Look at the Nina Ansarov fight, or the Nina Nunez fight. That's what Dern does, right? She's just able to get one, and then she wins the fight by submission. And I think that's what she's able to do against Angela Hill. I think she's going to find a way to get Hill down once. I think that's one time. She only needs one, either she drops Angela Hill, which likely won't happen, but she just needs to get Hill, to slip or something. She just needs to if Angela Hill is on the ground in one point in time, I think Dern's able to jump it back, get on her arm, get on her neck, and submit her. That's why I'm taking Mackenzie Dern to go in here and win this fight. I don't think it's going to happen in the first. I don't think it's going to happen in the third. I think it could happen at any point in the fight. I'm just going to take a wild guess and say it's going to happen in the second. Give me Mackenzie Dern to go in there and submit Angela Hill. She's going to get it done in the second round. So give me second round submission win for Mackenzie Dern.